Wigglesworth was a generous man. When he got royalties from his book, Ever Increasing Faith, they amounted to quite a sum. £20,000, which in those days would be about $100,000. Well, in 1940, $100,000 was a lot of money here, wasn't it? It was a very big sum of money. And Wigglesworth didn't keep one penny. He gave every cent to missions. He heard of a couple from India wanting to go back to India, and they couldn't raise their fare. He'd just come to the end of a month's meetings, and he'd had a very generous ministry gift, a love offering. And when he heard about these missionaries, he endorsed the check and gave it to them and said, "Here's your fare back to India." He gave because he discovered there's a principle. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Luke 6:38. And he lived by that and never lacked. He used to drink a lot of olive oil. Before ever polyunsaturated fats were ever heard of, he was always drinking olive oil. And when you couldn't get a small bottle during the war, God always saw to it that his servant had a gallon bottle. It was amazing how God supplied all his needs. A friend of mine named Willie Hacking has written a book. You may come across it, Wigglesworth Remembered. And Hacking knew him a lot closer than I did. And I was just trying to think what I was trying to tell you that about. It slipped out of my mind. But Willie Hacking knew him as a man who kept his word and a man who gave, and it was given unto him. It comes back to my mind now. He gave to Willie Hacking a copy of his book. He said, "Now, Willie, don't you lend that book to anyone. You see, if they borrow it off you, they won't buy it. And I want them to buy it because I want the profit to go to missions." He was moved in this wonderful way. He learned this secret. Someone said to him, "You know, you live by faith, but you're always well dressed." Well, he said, "My brother, I used to be a plumber. And if ever the time comes when my suit is worn out, my shoes are down at the heel, I say, Lord, it's about time I went back to plumbing." He thought God could look after him better than he could look after himself. And God did, when you really live by faith. Howard Carter was a well-known Bible teacher in those days and a friend of Wigglesworth, and he was a man who moved very much in the realm of faith. He lived by faith, and some said, "Brother Carter, you must have had some hard times living by faith." Hard times, he said. That would be dying by faith, not living by faith. See, when God gives, he gives abundantly. And in 2 Corinthians 9, verse 8 and verse 11, God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye always having all sufficiency in all things may abound unto every good work, being enriched in everything unto all bountifulness, which causeth through us thanksgiving to God. I have a friend in Indiana who is marvelously used of God. They have their church. He's been meeting in a barn. They're extending now to seat 500 in a village that has 300 inhabitants, and they're being packed to the doors. He said, "You know, I never learned the fullness of freedom until I learned to give. I was saved from the world's economy and brought into God's economy." And that's where Wigglesworth lived, in the sweetness and the freedom of the Spirit of God. Wigglesworth was a holy man. Holiness isn't a very popular doctrine. We're living in society when standards have gone. And when things are accepted, even amongst Christians, that used to be frowned on. And I'm not talking just about the negatives. I mean, there used to be a lot of thou shalt nots that were just human rules. But there are some principles of righteousness that are abandoned these days. And Wigglesworth was a man who was moved by the Spirit to hunger after righteousness. And he had a passion for holiness. And my brothers and sisters, and especially you young men and women, you'll never go wrong if that is a major passion in your heart, that you might be holy, that you might be like Jesus Christ. Wigglesworth lived in that realm. He was a very calm man. Wigglesworth was so calm that you never saw the slightest flutter of unrest in him. He was walking with Willie one day, and he just bought a new hat. And as they walked, the wind blew and took his new expensive hat right into the middle of the river. And Wigglesworth said, "Well, Brother Hacking," he said, "I don't think it's wise to walk out without a hat. Let's go home."